was supposed to be a simple trip. A work conference in a city I barely cared to visit, one night at a hotel and then back home. The kind of mundane obligation that fades from memory within days. That's what I thought when I first pulled into the parking lot of the Hotel Arcadia. The building was unremarkable at first glance. A faded red brick facade, tall windows that reflected the orange glow of the setting sun. The kind of place you'd pass on a long road trip without a second thought. But as I parked my car and glanced up at its looming structure, something about it struck me as off. Maybe it was the silence. Despite the cars scattered around the lot, I didn't see a single person entering or leaving. I shrugged it off and grabbed my bag. It was just one night, one uneventful night, or so I told myself. The lobby was empty, not just devoid of guests. Empty in a way that made it feel like I had stepped into a photograph instead of a living space. A vintage clock ticked softly on the far wall, its hands frozen at 10:15. The furniture looked untouched, like no one had sat on it in years. Even the air felt stale, carrying the faint scent of mildew. The clerk at the front desk startled me when he spoke. I hadn't even noticed him standing there, watching me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His uniform was outdated, a navy blue vest with brass buttons, and his name tag read, Edward. "Checking in?" he asked, his voice smooth but mechanical, like someone reciting lines in a play. "Yes," I replied, handing over my ID. "One night?" He nodded, tapping something into an old-fashioned computer that emitted a faint, rhythmic hum. "Room 308. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor and enjoy your stay." I thanked him, though his gaze lingered on me a moment too long, like he was studying me. As I turned toward the elevator, I realized there were no other guests in sight. No voices echoed through the hallways, no footsteps disturbed the silence. Just the soft hum of the old elevator as I stepped inside and pressed the button for the 3rd floor. When the doors opened, I was greeted by an empty hallway. The walls were painted a dull beige, and the carpet had a pattern of swirling vines that made me dizzy if I stared too long. The air was colder here, and the faint hum of the elevator quickly faded as its doors closed behind me. Room 308 was at the far end of the hall. The keycard worked on the first try, and the door creaked open to reveal a perfectly ordinary hotel room. A queen-sized bed with crisp white sheets, a desk with a complimentary notepad and pen, a small television mounted to the wall. It wasn't luxurious, but it wasn't unpleasant either. The kind of room you'd forget about as soon as you left. I dropped my bag on the bed and pulled back the curtains, revealing a view of the parking lot. My car was still there, and the sun was now dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lot. The sight of it reassured me for some reason. Everything was normal. Just a quiet night in a quiet hotel. But then I noticed something strange. The longer I stared at my car, the more the shadows around it seemed to move. Not in the way shadows shift as the sun sets, but in jerky, unnatural patterns, like something was crawling just out of sight. I blinked and shook my head, but when I looked again, everything was still.
I turned away from the window, brushing off the unease, and decided to take a shower. The bathroom was small but clean, and the water was hot, washing away the lingering tension. By the time I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, I felt a little more at ease. That is, until I noticed the note on the bed. It hadn't been there before. A single sheet of paper, neatly folded, placed directly in the center of the mattress. My name was written on the outside in precise, looping handwriting. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. The message inside was simple. Do not leave your room after midnight. My heart skipped a beat. I glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 11:47 p.m. The message couldn't have been there for more than a few minutes, yet I hadn't heard anyone enter the room. I checked the door. Locked. I checked the windows. Sealed shut. Whoever had left the note had done so without making a sound, and the thought made my skin crawl. I told myself it was a prank, a joke, maybe even something the hotel did to freak out its guests. But the handwriting, it felt personal. Like whoever had written it knew me, knew I'd find it. The minutes ticked by and my unease grew. The silence of the hotel seemed to press in around me, and the shadows in the room felt darker than they should have been. At exactly midnight, I heard it, a knock at the door. It was soft at first, just a single tap, then another, then a series of slow, deliberate knocks, each one louder than the last. My blood ran cold. I stayed frozen in place, the note crumpled in my hand, my breath shallow. "Hello?" a voice called from the other side. It was a man's voice, deep and calm, but something about it felt wrong. "Office. Is anyone there?" I didn't answer. "Please," the voice continued. "I need help. My keycard isn't working." The doorknob rattled. My heart raced. I backed away, my eyes locked on the door, every instinct screaming at me to stay silent. Then, the voice changed. "Let me in, Emma." My blood turned to ice. I hadn't told anyone my name. The knocking stopped, replaced by silence so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. Then, the footsteps started. Slow, deliberate, moving down the hall and fading into the distance. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed huddled on the bed, the note clutched in my hands, waiting for the sun to rise. When morning finally came, I rushed to the front desk, desperate to check out and leave. But when I got there, the lobby was empty. No clerk, no guests. Even the clock on the wall was gone, leaving only a blank space where it had hung. I ran outside to the parking lot, relieved to see my car still there. But as I opened the door and glanced back at the hotel, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The windows were dark, every single one of them. No lights, no movement. And yet, I felt eyes watching me from every shadowed pane. I drove away as fast as I could, leaving the Hotel Arcadia behind. But even now, weeks later, I can still hear that voice in my dreams. "Let me in, Emma."